Welcome to the Premier League prediction series, where I predict all 10 games of all the weeks of the Premier League. This week is week 37, and, well, obviously it's not just me predicting.
Yes, that's true. There's also me, ChatGPT.
The scores on the doors for all three of us. I won. I actually won a week against ChatGPT. But I've got 2 weeks and I'm 14 points behind. I have to have the best 2 weeks of predicting ever to actually beat ChatGPT. The Random Football Scoreline Generator's lost, but it's almost impossible, especially how bad I am at predicting, that I'm going to be able to beat ChatGPT.
No chance of catching up.
Villa Park up first. Aston Villa versus Liverpool. Both teams haven't been amazing recently, especially Aston Villa, drawing 2-2 to Burnley. It was a very close end-to-end game. Both Burnley and Aston Villa were creating chances. And Aston Villa, I've said this in previous recent videos, the last 10 or so games I feel like are slowly performing worse and worse. And they're definitely not performing as good as they were nearer to the start of the season. Liverpool, they drew to Chelsea. That's a boring game. There was a total of 14 shots out of the entire game. Not one team, the entire game. Do I think Liverpool can beat Aston Villa? Yes, I'm going 2-1 to Liverpool. It's a very common scoreline. Plus, I think Liverpool have been playing better than Aston Villa. And the fact that Aston Villa drew against relegated Burnley, it puts the icing on top of the cake for Liverpool to win.
So for Aston Villa versus Liverpool, I think it'll be a 2-2 draw. Villa are tough at home and Liverpool's attack is still potent, so I see a back and forth.
Skipping Saturday, it's Sunday. All these games are on Now TV. Manchester United versus Nottingham Forest at Old Trafford. Nottingham Forest, they've survived now. They got a draw against Newcastle United. It was a gutting feeling, especially Elliot Anderson scoring against Newcastle. His former club, how could he? It felt like Newcastle were going to get a second. Then out of nowhere, Nottingham Forest were really eager. And they just didn't give Newcastle any time on the ball. And then Elliot Anderson. We all know how good Elliot Anderson is. He got on the ball, brilliant dribbling, brilliant goal. Could Nick Pope do a bit better to save that? Probably. But Nottingham Forest get another point. And they haven't lost for ages. They're winning, they're drawing. I think they're going to be able to get a draw here. Not a win, because it's at Old Trafford and Manchester United are actually playing well. I'm going to go a Desmond 2-2. I say Man United are playing well. And no draw against Sunderland. You're allowed, the one-off game now and again. But for the most part, Man United look like a well-structured team, and I think they can get a draw against Nottingham Forest, who are starting to perform like they did last season.
For Manchester United versus Nottingham Forest, I'm going with 1-1. United have been inconsistent and Forest are scrappy.
Brentford at the G-Tech Community Stadium versus Crystal Palace in a London derby. Now, Crystal Palace against Everton, they managed to get a Desmond 2-2. I think for the most part, Crystal Palace played pretty well. It was a very entertaining, high-scoring, end-to-end game, and at times it felt like Crystal Palace were the better team. So I think Crystal Palace can definitely get a point in this game, especially against a Brentford side who has been trailing off with a lot of draws, some losses, and only one win. And that was against West Ham, who were in a relegation battle. Plus, even though Brentford beat West Ham, I still felt like it was a much closer game than 3-0. West Ham hit the post multiple times, and Brentford obviously got a penalty, and there was also an own goal. So really, they only scored one actual open play goal themselves in that game, and overall, I felt like West Ham were unlucky. against Brentford. So I don't think Brentford are all that good recently. And after getting battered 3-0 by Man City, I know they did manage to hold off Man City for 60 minutes, but still, it was a domination fest. Even throughout those 60 minutes, it did look like Man City at any moment would score, and they did. So I'm going to say a 1-1 draw, because Brentford do draw a lot, and Crystal Palace are definitely not playing amazing. But I don't think Brentford have been playing as good as they were. And I think we'll definitely drop a couple of points in this game.
Brentford versus Crystal Palace, I see Brentford taking it 2-1 just because of their home edge and Palace's away struggles.
Ellen Road, Leeds United versus Brighton and Hove Albion. Brighton got a 3-0 win versus Wolves. Now, Wolves are 20th place, and Brighton did absolutely dominate them. But they're facing Leeds United, who are also in form. They're playing pretty well. Yes, maybe the first half could have gone a bit better against Tottenham Hotspur, but they still managed to get a draw against Tottenham, who are really fighting to stay up. Plus, they actually did it away from home. And overall, Leeds are playing amazing. I'm gonna go for a 2-2 draw. Both teams are playing amazing, and I find it very hard to split it.
Leeds United versus Brighton, I think Brighton win 2-1. Their possession and structure will be key.
Wolverhampton Wanderers at the Molineux Stadium versus Fulham. It's going to be a close game. Fulham against Bournemouth. I don't think you played terrible, Fulham. You definitely made it a close game. You had plenty of shots, plenty of the ball against Bournemouth, but you still scored 0 goals. And overall, before the Bournemouth game, you're being average to meh. So, if there is a chance for Wolves to get 3 points at some point, I think at home against Fulham is actually a decent chance too. I think Wolves can win this 1-0. I think overall, for the most part, Fulham will dominate. Definitely. But I've got a feeling at home, Wolves haven't won for a long time. I think also Wolves still have an alright squad. And under Rob Edwards, defensive performances have been improving. I know they lost to Brighton 3-0, but I think Fulham are going to be a bit easier of a team to defend against, because recently Fulham have been going down a downward trend.
Wolves versus Fulham is going to be a tight 1-1, both teams mid-table, and I think they'll cancel each other out.
Goodison Park up next. It is Everton versus Sunderland. Sunderland 0-0 against Manchester United. You got a point against a very good team, so congratulations there. But overall, again, that 5-0 loss against Nottingham Forest, it really did spin my head on how good Sunderland are. And I think away against Everton, I don't think they're going to be able to do it. If Sunderland were home, I'll go for a draw. But because they're away against Everton with the likes of Beto performing really good, that goal was very good. His physicality, composure, and a nice shimmy and ball control and skill was great to get that goal against Crystal Palace. It was a really good finish. Beto's on form. Everton's playing well. I'm going 1-0 Everton.
Everton versus Sunderland, I'm going 2-1 Everton. Sunderland are fighting, but Everton at home will edge it.
Over to St James's Park, it's Newcastle United versus West Ham United. West Ham, I predicted 4-1 to Arsenal. It was only 1-0, and there was some controversy, but I think the conclusion of whether that should have been a goal equaliser for West Ham was correct. It was obvious that the West Ham player had his arm on David Raya's neck, making it hard for David Raya to get the ball. And on top of that, behind David Raya, there was also a shirt pull. So I would say it was a fair decision. And they were unlucky because against Brentford, they did pretty well, but they couldn't score. Against Arsenal, they did pretty well, but didn't score. And you might think now Newcastle United have nothing to play for, that it's not going to be a hard game. And the fact that Newcastle have also been going on a downward trend. And against Nottingham Forest, Eddie Howe did make some controversial decisions. I do agree with some of the points that people make for Eddie Howe needing to leave the club, because He's just not doing well at Newcastle. But I think that's being too harsh to blame everything on Eddie Howe. Yes, maybe bringing on a right back for the main central midfielder, Bruno Guimaraes, which is going to help on the attack, and going more defensive and trying to clear the ball constantly rather than going for the winner to have a chance at Europe was a bad decision by Eddie Howe. But for the most part, I think he's doing fine. I feel like people seem to blame the manager for a lot when I think the majority of it is probably from the players. And I think overall Newcastle did not play bad against Nottingham Forest. And I think for the majority of the game, it felt like Newcastle should have got a second or third. Voltemade and William Osula, that chance was huge. And I know Anthony Gordon is probably leaving Newcastle. Maybe he should have played. I feel like he should have started Harvey Barnes. I do feel like playing Joe Linton in left wing was a bit odd. But against West Ham, I think West Ham are going to struggle against the likes of Joe Linton, because at least at the start of the game, Joe Linton, if he wasn't in that starting 11 against Nottingham Forest, I think Nottingham Forest would have had a lot more chances in that first half. Joe Linton stopped a lot of chances and allowed Newcastle to keep the ball. I mean, he's literally a unit. He's like he's got a invisible force field around him. Anytime a Nottingham player tries to tackle Joe Linton, it's impossible. They just bounce off of him onto the floor. Joe Linton is a powerhouse of a unit in the midfield, and I think it's going to be a real problem for West Ham. I think West Ham will score because Newcastle haven't been amazing, but I think Newcastle are going to win 2-1. I think Newcastle got enough defensive ability. Sven Botman is playing well defensively. Lewis Hall, it's crucial. Lewis Hall playing right back was a bit odd, but when Lewis Miley is injured and when Livramento is injured, it makes sense to use the fullbacks. So I don't think that was a terrible decision by Eddie Howe. And Malik Chow, oh my god, his slide tackling and last ditch defending is brilliant. So even though Callum Wilson, I adore you, I think West Ham are getting relegated. It's going to be a close game. And remember, I did predict Newcastle win against Nottingham Forest. And look how that turned out. Elliot Anderson betrayed his former side Newcastle. I still want Newcastle to win even though it means nothing. I want Newcastle to get as many points as possible, whether it means West Ham are relegated or not. It's nothing personal to West Ham, it's just business.
Newcastle versus West Ham, I think Newcastle take it 3-1. West Ham just can't keep up with Newcastle's attack.
Arsenal versus Burnley. Now, Burnley might be able to tickle Arsenal here a bit. Have a bit of fun. I mean, obviously Arsenal have got something to play for. Burnley don't. Arsenal are home. Burnley don't. Burnley have not won in ages. Arsenal won last game against West Ham, and Arsenal are first and Burnley are 19th. I'm still going 3-1 Arsenal, but I think Burnley might even be 1-1 by the 60th minute or something. I could imagine that happening because Arsenal kept it a very tight game against West Ham, and considering Burnley hindered the likes of Aston Villa, it could definitely be a closer game than paper suggests.
Arsenal versus Burnley, this one's a comfortable 3-0 for Arsenal. They're just relentless at home.
AFC Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium versus Manchester City. Now, last video I said if Bournemouth win against Fulham after I predicted a 1-1 draw in that game, then I would always go for Bournemouth to win for the rest of the season. That's what I'm doing. Now, I actually agree with it. I think at home, Bournemouth can win against Man City. Semenyo going against his former club Bournemouth is going to be a great show to watch, considering how well Bournemouth are playing. Bournemouth are playing outstanding, and so are Manchester City. Man City are actually playing today against Crystal Palace. If you want to know what I predicted, check out the previous week of predictions. But the fact that Man City did blip up against Everton, I think Bournemouth also has a lot to fight for, and at home, I think Man City are going to blip up. I feel like Man City have more pressure, and with that pressure, they might blip up. The fact that they blipped up against Everton, and the fact they're going against Bournemouth at the wrong time. If they went against Bournemouth when they were in 15th, then this would be an easy win. But Bournemouth, even without Semenyo, are playing amazing. So I think Bournemouth are going to win 3-2. It's going to be a very close game. but home advantage is going to knock it towards Bournemouth.
Bournemouth versus Manchester City. I'm saying 3-1 City. Bournemouth fight, but City's got too much class right now.
Chelsea versus Tottenham Hotspur. Chelsea have been losing. They managed to get a draw against Liverpool, but that's by far the most boringest game of week 36. Tottenham, 13 minutes at a time against Leeds United. That's a lot of added time. And Matthias Tell being the big talking point against Leeds United, not only did he make a very funky clearance across his own penalty box, Tell, for Tottenham, but he also tried to bicycle kick, not to shoot, but to clear the ball, hitting Ampadu in the head with his foot. And then he made a fantastic goal of the week contested goal. And on top of that, Tottenham, James Maddison returned for 18 to 20 minutes, even though he came on at the 85th minute. And Tottenham in the last few games have been picking up a lot of points, and for the first half did look better than Leeds United. So even though there are a lot of concerns with Tottenham, Kinski actually made some good saves against Leeds. So especially facing a Chelsea team who are struggling to get points, who are struggling to score goals, I think with Kinski as well in goal, Tottenham are going to be able to get a point. They're going to draw this 1-1, and that's it. If Tottenham draw 1-1, if West Ham loses to Newcastle, it's done. The relegation battle is over. And if Man City lose to Bournemouth, like I said, and if Arsenal beat Burnley, the title race is done, the relegation battle done. I think I could be massively wrong. I mean, this is my worst season for predicting the Premier League ever. By a long shot, I have fallen off in my prediction skills massively. So me saying this is the last week that matters could be completely wrong, and it could be all to play for in week 38 when it comes to the title race and relegation battle.
And for Chelsea versus Tottenham, I see Chelsea sneaking at 2-1. They need a bounce back, and Tottenham can be shaky. So that's my take. Let's see how it plays out.
The goal of the week, I'm giving it to Matthias Tell. It was a highlight of a very fascinating game against Leeds United. Do you think I can win against ChatGPT? Just to remind you, these is how the score system works. It's almost impossible. 1 like equals 1 prayer for me to beat ChatGPT in this prediction series. Toodaloo.